there is Italian in my blood, but brother, I have a hard time with those last names. So, um, anyways, without much more to do, let me hand it over to Lou. Let him give you an introduction of himself and Lon, and we'll get going from there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lou Yantoro. I'm the Business Development Manager for Melco. I've been with Melco for over 3 years. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the decorating side, supply side of the business for over 40 years. And some of you might know me from being the national sales manager of a company that was bought out by Alpha Broder the last few years called Imprints Wholesale. I created a shirt, a 6-ounce t-shirt that I wanted to kind of give you some anecdotal information on that has something to do with embroidery. Many, many years ago, the resort printers that were my customers were looking at this new hot trend of embroidery and mixed media, screen printing and embroidery at the same time. And there was a 5.5-ounce cotton shirt, and I was working for Fruit of Loom at that time, and a 7-ounce cotton shirt. And they wanted to have a shirt that they could do both on. The 7-ounce was too expensive, and the 5.5-ounce was too tricky to put a stitch on and have it hold and look good after it was washed. So I authored a shirt that Fruit of Loom decided to run with, a 6-ounce cotton t-shirt. And you may see that now in the industry. That is a standard shirt by all the mills. Fruit of Loom introduced it, and all the mills then followed suit. But that is a t-shirt that gives you an opportunity to put some stitches on and do some embroidery and do some mixed media. So I think that's kind of a fun fact that to share with you is way back when there was a 6-ounce shirt that was created, and it came from my resort guys and an idea at a sales meeting at Fruit of the Loom. But more importantly today, I want to introduce you to a very good friend of mine, Lon Winters, who's one of the top decorating apparel consultants in the industry, who is Printwear Magazine screen print guru for many years, writes articles every month for them, consultative articles for Printwear Magazine. He's a current Melco customer, by the way, and he's a former almost lifetime customer for myself. That goes back a little bit there, Lon. Lon Winters has won countless national screen print contest awards. They're called Golden Squeegee Awards, and his wall, if you're in the right place in his office, would be covered with them. So, Lon, I want you to take a few minutes and introduce yourself, introduce your consulting business, and kind of what you're up to these days.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks, Mike. You know, you say some really nice things about me, Lou. I appreciate that. But we certainly wouldn't be anywhere where we're at without the team that we have. So I'd give a big shout out to the Graphic Elephants group. Jason's been with me almost 25 years. You may have seen him at some of the trade shows with me, and he travels with me to some of our clients. Super talented guy. I love him like a son or a little brother, or not exactly sure what, but the one thing we know he is he's consistent. He does it my way because he's never seen it done any other way. Ken, who's been with me since the OP days, we got started in this business, went to work for Ocean Pacific in Denver in the late 80s, and I always tease that I can still fit into my blue corduroy shorts that were so popular back in the late 80s, early 90s. My illustrator, Corey's awesome. These guys are the best in the business. And we've got a great embroidery lead, John. You'll get to meet him when you come visit over the next couple of weeks. And my wife, Jane, who we just celebrated 31 years, who basically we've been together for 35 years. So she's been managing me for an awful long time. She kind of holds the whole thing together for us. So that's kind of our executive staff. Definitely want to give them a shout out. And every one of those awards that Lou mentioned, they've certainly been a part of, whether it's the execution or the art and design or development. I just kind of run the curtain. I open it up and make them do the work, and then I shut it when the show's over, kind of thing. But really appreciate all their hard work. And we kind of, I mentioned we started over 30 years ago. I always tease that it's too late to be a doctor, so we better get pretty good at it. We grew up basically screen printing first. We do a number of other decorating as well, from transfer to embroidery to DTG, but our strength is definitely in screen printing, and that's where all the volume is and what we've done over the years. We have a studio that we call it a studio so we can keep it cleaner and more organized than a typical factory. The beauty of it is reasonably small, and it's in a building on my property in little dinky Cowtown, Elizabeth, rural Colorado, which is great because we don't get a whole lot of visitors, even pre-COVID, unless they're invited, which is awful nice as well. So we can stay fairly focused and kind of do what we do. So the combination of the decorating studio with our consulting business in the field, we have kind of the luxury that we learn from our own mistakes, but we also get to kind of get an idea of what other people are doing. So as much as we get credited with doing the teaching, we do an awful lot of learning because we get the opportunity to spend time with other clients and other decorators around the world, as well as other manufacturers and dealers. So it's kind of a luxury for us that we get kind of the both sides of the aisle, and both portions of our business, I think, strengthen the other portions of our business.
Hey, Lon, Fruit of the Loom has used you as a consultant. So you have apparel manufacturers using as a consultant, and then you also have equipment manufacturers using as a consultant. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We over the last 30 years, I'm kind of maybe an old loyal dog to a fault. So somewhere around I don't know, 5 years ago or so, maybe a little longer, 5-7 years ago, we kind of realized that that loyalty had a little bit of a leverage point. And rather than, I guess, taking a finder's fee or being paid a commission to resell a product or a piece of equipment, we partnered with a number of manufacturers and dealers in a way that we could help service and promote the product, but in a way that was more of a partnership or hey, we use this product because we believe in it, not because anybody's paying us. At the same time, how can we get paid? So the ultimate challenge was we kind of created these retainers with some of the manufacturers who basically pay X amount a month or X amount a quarter. And then we may travel with their salespeople to their customers, or we may do some benchmarking for them on a particular ink, or we may do some beta testing on a new piece of equipment. Just any number of things that become kind of we become their kind of expertise in the field. And then we also can talk to customers from a pure decorator perspective versus a salesperson from the manufacturer. And that seems to be a value proposition for the manufacturers and the dealers. So that's worked out for us pretty well over the last 5 to 7 years.
Great. I want to dig in real quick. You're a big fan of our Melco single head solution for multi-head embroidery production. That's a big sentence, but basically simply said is, you know, Melco here, we produce single head machines, but they network and they become multi-head machines. And tell us a little bit about why you chose the Melco multi-head solution way back when you were looking at, actually you were kind of a done deal on a 6-head, I believe, machine from our competitors. And almost by chance, you kind of came across some information about Melco and made the switch.
Well, I made a couple of notes to this so I don't forget some of the points, but for the most part, we started doing the research in 06, 07. I was in kind of an ugly relationship with a partner that ultimately the factory is no more, let's put it that way. And at that time, our approach, Jason was with me at that factory, and we were going to start over with what we said was all the good that was left from that factory and rebuild what is now Graphic Elephants. We were a long time, probably used Tajima machines, not to mention a competitor, but, and I'm not going to knock them, I'll actually compliment them, for 10 years. We ran 15 head machines, and honestly, you can drop them off a building and they'll still sell. Tajima is a great brick shit house kind of machine. And we were real close to closing on a 6-head machine to start the new business. And I was at a trade show because, as everybody knows, we do a lot of exhibiting and attending. You can't beat the networking opportunities at some of the trade shows. And happened by Mike's booth and went, now what is this? As we were kind of almost closed on a 6-head machine, and just the concept alone sold us on it. We're running 15-head machines and come from a screen print background. Embroidery is so slow. It made me nuts because we can run 1,000 pieces an hour on our screen print equipment. You get behind a couple thousand pieces and you can come in on a Saturday and bust it out in a couple of hours and be caught back up. You get behind a couple thousand pieces of embroidery and you're behind weeks. So we took our management style or a lot of what I understood about, we always call it feeding the beast, as far as staging and hooping equipment and multiple hoops and unloading machines and pulling the hoops away and unhooping and trimming and taking the backing off and all those kinds of things at separate stations so we could keep the machines sewing. That was always the one thing you can't control is just keeping those things pounding because they'll only go so fast. So every time we got a thread break on a 15-head machine, it was just like, oh my God, 15 units aren't sewing now. So just the concept of being able to set up 15 single heads on a single operating system and one goes down, for whatever reason, I got 14 still sewing, just to do an apples to apples comparison. But the expandability, the ability to run a single sample, when we had a single head machine to do our samples, but when we get overloaded with samples, we'd be running samples on 15 head machines, and it's just hard to even wrap your arms around. So we basically were flat sold the minute I saw the concept or the whole idea of a modular system. We got out of the 6-head deal, and my Tajima friends still give me a hard time about it, but it was the right call, particularly because we do a ton of development and we have to have ultimate flexibility. And I got to be able to walk away from a machine that's down and so the other machines. And this was going back probably 06, 07 when we started doing the research.
Wow, that's awesome. Most of our viewers are embroidery decorators. What steps can you with our viewers that would be the most logical for them to grow their business? Kind of staying in the modular, the way that you're thinking and the way that you think about production, so that their equipment outlay isn't too risky, and what would be best suited for like what COVID has brought today with internet storefronts and internet sales. What advice would you have?
You know, it's interesting. We're transitioning ourselves, and have been. I guess we all have been for 30 years. When I first got in the business, we had big runs, 10,000 piece runs, 20,000 piece runs. They weren't uncommon. So basically, it was all about just keeping things running, and hence the idea of multi-head machines. And as we started moving down to smaller equipment, even to the 6 heads, 4 heads, and single heads with a singular operating system, our business has changed. And a couple of mentors of mine, a guy, Mark Coudray, big in our industry, has said for years that we're in a race to a unit of one. Now that's scary for a screen printer to think in terms of we're in a race to the unit of one.
How true though.
It is. Now that, I mean, I think there's some modular things you can do on the screen print side of things, whether that's you can build dryers that can be expandable. You can build oval machines that are expandable. You can buy them a certain size and increase their size. But more importantly to that, if we are on a race to the unit of one, then it's about digital equipment, it's about embroidery, it's about being able to do this mass customization, this mass personalization type of thing. So with the online component, the e-commerce, with COVID kind of forcing everybody's hand, I think we were headed there anyway. We gotta act faster to do that. We've mostly stayed away from digital because it's not our expertise. And recently now we have 2 direct-to-garment machines. So and we're not doing gangbusters online by any stretch, but we know that's where we kind of have to head. And then the combo or the hybrid model with the screen print machine and the digital component is pretty exciting right now. With the in my world, they call it digital squeegee, which is pretty cool. Where you screen print bases or special effects, and then you can do variable data on top of the special effects. So the brands are really embracing that with in a big way, where you can maybe change the icon within the image individually. So there's still good volume out there, but being able to provide for a smaller run size and even onesie twosies is going to be more and more important to be able to do, because people that do, and this is the reason we got into embroidery in the first place 20 some years ago, is your customer that does screen printing likely does embroidery as well, whether that's contracted, full package, or whatever it is. And now the same can be said for digital. So if you don't offer that service, you're giving your competitor who might offer multiple services the advantage to take your work that you maybe are good at. So ultimately, I think offering more is important without getting too carried away. We also had a chance to buy a print to cut vinyl machine, or I think that's what you'd call it, print to cut.
Print to cut.
Outside of my expertise. But ultimately, we kind of pulled back on them because we know wearables. And if we get into that business, do we have the resources to support it or learn about it or know how to even sell it to our customers? And is that too far outside of what we know how to do? And in our opinion, it was, so we didn't go there. But we've embraced the DTG just because we kind of have to.
Great minds think alike, because Melco offers the modular embroidery machines, the Epson modular, which in fact you have picked up an Epson, I guess, recently, and the roll and cutters. So we've kind of touched that, and including the sublimation machine. So that's really great to hear that you see the future, you know, in the new setup looks like that. That kind of leads into my next question, Lon, is walk us through how you visualize possibly setting up kind of a new production plant, you know, a small one, medium size, kind of what are the things that you would kind of envision as you walked in, what you would see, what would be, you know, a good kind of suggestion of what you might advise as a consultant?
Well, through experience, we've come up with kind of three concepts that we kind of recommend, and size doesn't necessarily matter. It's more about whatever the constraints of the setup's going to be. You know, it's single automatic and 6 heads of embroidery versus 50 heads of embroidery and 10 automatic. All those things are kind of relative, and then based on the space. But there's a couple of different models that we try to get people to start thinking about before they even set up. Is you got to create an understanding that it's oversimplifying it, but we have to handle it as garbage in and garbage out. So we have to figure out how we bring product in the door, convert it, and put it out the door. So one version, if you've got the right layout, is we call it a linear model. When product comes in one door, goes through the process, and goes out a second door. That's typically not how buildings are arranged. It's nice when they are, but ultimately they don't usually work out that way. A more typical layout in a smaller layout, if you've got a single overhead door, we call it a circular model. Product comes in, a single overhead door, goes through the system, and then comes back out that same door. And then a little bit of a kind of a compromise or kind of a mid-size and more common, and we do this quite a bit, is a horseshoe or a U model, where you have 2 bay doors and maybe they're on the same side of the building. Product comes in, receiving, goes through the system, and then leaves out the second door for the shipping area. So you kind of, most layouts or most workflows are set up in one of those three or a combination of those three kind of general models. And I always encourage people, even if they're not good at CAD or Illustrator or Corel, or get graph paper out and figure out your layout and cut out some circles and squares and build them to scale and start moving things around with thumbtacks and red arrows for the product and green arrows for the supplies coming in, and try to make sense of this flow with minimal crossover and minimal tracks that we call them, where if you follow the job through, how many steps does it take to get from one process to the next process to the next process, and then how that works within the layout. And you can make some big mistakes just by laying things out in a couple feet wrong. If you set up your hooping station and it's not mobile, we usually get as much as we can on wheels, so that if we do make a mistake, we can quickly rearrange. We're not so lucky to do that with automatic presses and dryers, but if you miss a layout with an automatic press and a dryer by 6 inches, you could be adding a step which slows you down X% an hour on being able to unload. So those kinds of things become pretty darn important. But the mobility of everything, particularly on your single heads, because they don't sit on the floor or on blocks like some of the multi-heads, you've got that flexibility to kind of rearrange things. Because as you know, you may have most everything you do is left chest size. So maybe you can run, a single operator can run 6 machines. But if your workload changes and suddenly you've got full back locations, maybe that operator can run more or less depending on the size of the logos and stuff. So you can reconfigure in your little pods and your operating configuration. So that gives you the flexibility. And I think everything you do, you got to give yourself flexibility to make changes as you grow or the business model changes.
I can remember, Lon, when in your previous life, in the large plant that was one of the largest ones in the region, that everything was on wheels. Everything moved around and had the ability to move around and change and adjust to the production schedule. Your production, the flow was everything to you. So that's good advice to our viewers that get as much of it on wheels as you can and roll it around. It'd be a lot easier on your back as well.
Well, and the whole idea to this business, and it's even more so with the smaller runs and the mass customization, personalization. Those things make you have to be even more flexible. I remember always, having you have a production schedule that you're basically going to adhere to, but you're going to have to juggle it. Something's going to change, and that's being flexible enough to take a rush order, being flexible enough to group things together that maybe weren't grouped originally, so you don't have to change out thread colors or whatever, those kinds of things. That it's kind of you have a master plan, but you're constantly throwing balls in the air because it's going to change today. And I think embracing both the flexibility with a plan gives you a chance to actually meet the day's requirements, versus I don't think you can go at it without a plan. You'll beat yourself to death. But you can't be so rigid in your scheduling that you have no room to take on a new client that could increase your sales this year by 15%. How can you not take on a new client? So there's you just have to embrace kind of both sides of it.
This would be a good time to mention to everybody watching, we're going to post Graphic Elephant's contact information, Lon's company's information. If you've got questions in regard to what Graphic Elephants does, and maybe looking at doing some business with them, like Lou has mentioned, a wonderful company. So we'll put their information on there. And I think, Lon, you've got like a place in, it might be impressions, but some blog posts that we might be able to link to as well, right?
Yeah, that's a work in progress always as well. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and then we are working on hopefully an interactive type of blog situation. It's cool. Not up and running yet, but certainly any of the social media places you can find us as well.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll connect you with Lon and Graphic Elephants. So sorry, Lou, I just wanted to jump in there and mention that. So.
Well, sure.
Thanks, Mike.
I wanted Lon to talk about a little bit too, that his partnership with Inksoft, he runs the Inksoft software program with his lovely wife, Jane, and where are you going to leverage that going forward? I know that it's now more important than it ever has been. Can you just say a few words about, what opportunities are there?
I think unless you've been hiding under a rock through all of this COVID changes that we're all kind of trying to live through and just trying to survive, our whole industry has certainly embraced the Inksoft platform and the fundraising stores, and I would venture to say has raised millions as an industry, embracing the idea of the whole idea of the fundraiser and the T-shirt is always worked. Going back to years ago when the towers came down, we raised $1 million in a weekend.
Wow.
Just by building the shirt and saying we're going to give $7 as the proceeds to the victims of 9/11, and got a radio station and a grocery store chain on board, and we had 60,000 pieces in grocery stores before the end of the weekend. That model works for everything, whether it's holding up a restaurant or a local fun run for a fighting some terminal disease, or it works absolutely everywhere at every scale. It works for the local football team. It works for United Way. Those models work, and with Inksoft's help, a lot of decorators jumped on board right away. Mostly, it was pretty easy to put it out there and say, hey, help your local restaurant, but help us too. You're going to buy a $20 T-shirt, and 10 of it's going to go to us to help us, and 10 of it's going to go to the store or the cause, and you get a cool T-shirt. Okay. So rather than writing a check for nothing, the general public is always willing to throw a $20 bill or $10 bill and get a cool shirt on top of it. So, I would bet it's millions and millions that has been raised for local businesses as well as for our own well-being and survival as well.
Yeah, the Inksoft platform offers a storefront opportunity, able to easily put up information about your product, your particular organization you're supporting, and offer an offering, show the examples of the embroidery or screen print you're going to do, and then get ordered. You can time it, but your orders come in. It gives you a way to get it paid for. That's always kind of the tricky part in the big equation for it. So thanks for that information, and kind of how you see Inksoft fitting in for us.
Plus their software seems to get better all the time. They're constantly working on things that were a little buggy a couple of years ago have been worked out, and they're always adding new features and making things easier. And those guys they're programming constantly and creating kind of new opportunities for us all the time. So it's good folks to have in your corner.
Yeah, and the other thing about them, one of the comments that I hear about them sometimes is they're expensive. But what I have to say about that is, yes, you have to pay for that service, but you're getting a quality service for that cost, and used correctly, it's going to make you a lot of money. So it's the same saying I'm sure with print equipment as it is with embroidery equipment, and then software solutions like we're talking about right now. If you pay little, you're probably going to get little.
Sure.
And if you invest in a good company that's got great customer service, like an Inksoft, that product, if used correctly and you invest your time in it, is going to do a lot of great things for you.
Just kind of wrapping up, is there anything, Lon, that in the big picture that this COVID, what COVID has done that is bad for the industry, and kind of also touch on what COVID has done that's good for the industry? You know, the decorating industry, embroidery, screen print, direct to garment, all of it.
Well, I mean, I think most of us are suffering in a volume perspective. It's you. I had this conversation this morning with my wife. It's, we keep waiting it out. We keep waiting it out, and you're not going to have success on the other side if you don't survive. So survival's number one, but forward thinking and trying to figure out what it looks like on the other side. There's got to be new customers and different customers, and the good piece is everybody's had to scale down a bit, even if not a small amount. To some degrees, we've all had to get leaner and smarter, and we've been working with some coaching. I mentioned Mark Coudray, and we've been working on an 80-20 policy, or an 80-20 approach the last couple of years, in that seems like you do 80% of the work for the bottom 20% of your clients. So the magic is trying to figure out how to lose the 20% dogs and put that 80% of your work into the well-paying and the good customers. And it's easier said than done, but I think we're forced to make much smarter, well thought out, conservative decisions. And I think that's good for us as an industry overall. Now, I would say, and again, the bad is we're going to lose some people. Crossing my fingers, knocking on wood, working my tail off harder than I think I've ever worked for less revenue. But I feel like we'll survive. But I also have a lot of colleagues and industry friends that have already closed up and said, we're not even going to try to come back. We're done with this. They lived through the downturn in 07, 08. They lived through 9/11, and they're just not going to do it again, and not try to rebuild. So those are the sad things, or the bad things. Those of us that will survive, I think we'll be stronger than ever. There'll be attrition, and maybe that's the not so well run anyway, and ultimately we'll be stronger for it, and maybe that's just spinning it, but it's all I got. We keep saying we're charging forward, staying positive, trying to bottle what we do in smaller portions, and trying to deliver it in some online type of platform. And that's kind of our simplest version of trying to figure out what we do next.
One of the things that I found interesting about our industry is, I'm a huge history fan, looking back at like World War II and how the country came together to make sure that we won that war, that our troops overseas had everything that they needed to. And I think it's really interesting that our industry, if you think about a year ago, hardly anybody wore masks. Nobody wore masks. And now hardly anybody doesn't wear masks.
Right.
And what's interesting is, as everything started to progress, March, April, you're like, people are scrambling, trying to figure out how to make them. And by the end of April, all of the large blank manufacturing companies had come up with, solutions, and did it more. I think the cost on it doesn't seem like they're gouging us to try to make a huge profit off of this. They really looked at it and go, how can we help our country? And to me, that really that patriotism in our industry just makes me proud of being a part of this industry.
I was reading where our industry was the most aggressive. Now, I mean, we already work in cotton and fabric, and so at the end of the day, our industry might have been the only one that could have provided that kind of volume that quickly as everybody pivoted and started making masks. It's a great feeling to be a part of, wanting to help for sure, and as quickly as many of them moved, and we partnered with Allmade when early on, and did a bunch of their stuff right out of the box, which has been real popular for us. They were kind of one of the early ones to. Now I know it's out of desperation. What are we going to do with all this fabric and nobody buying T-shirts? Well, this is what we're going to do. I would say not necessarily all made. The supply chain in our business is rough right now. I'm trying to get X garments. I can't find XYZ and black and double X because they're all made into masks. So I can't get the. So we have these weekly calls on Catalyst, and we all talk about it. In that the manufacturers aren't refilling the dealers, and of course the dealers have been hit. Alpha closed a few of their people, a few of their DCs, and the one in Denver here that breaks Lou's and my heart. We grew up with imprints and Scott from way back when, and now the Alpha warehouse here in Denver is no more. So there definitely some fallout for sure. That's the bad, but those of us we'll be stronger on the other side.
Amen.
Well, Lon, that's all the questions I have for you today. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us. I think I've been writing notes, and I hope our viewers have written a few notes because I think there's some good takeaways that we had today. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, great stuff, Lon. I really appreciate you giving us some time and sharing this information with with the world. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I think these kinds of things are real important for our community right now. So anytime we can touch each other in a positive way, I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Well, yeah, thank you guys. And if you have any questions,